Hello, low ego action heroes. It's Debbie Levitt from Delta CX, and it is Monday, October 19th, 2020. Where is the time going, and can it please go faster? And I want to welcome everybody to today's podcast, totally live as usual. And this is episode 81. We're going to be learning about UX terminology and acronyms from super friend of the show. I think she has been here 5 times. We love her, and we will always say yes when she has an idea of something to talk about. Welcome, as always, Michele Ronsen from Curiosity Tank. Michele, while I open up all kinds of screens, tell everybody who you are.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be back. Thank you for having me again, Debbie. I'm Michele Ronsen. I'm based in San Francisco. I like to joke that I am a recovering designer. I moved into research, user research and design research about 10 years ago. I am the founder of Curiosity Tank, and I spend a great deal of time trying to help other people ask better questions. I train individuals and teams around the world how to increase their curiosity skills, add rigor to that, so that they can make better and more informed decisions. You can learn more about me and those classes at curiositytank.com. And I also consult. So for the last 10 years, I've been consulting for some of the world's most, how do we say this, recognizable brands. And I just do what I love, and I love what I do. And I love helping other people discover how to do this as well. So thanks for having me again.
Of course, always good to have you here. And just a reminder, if you're joining live, I am monitoring the LinkedIn chat room, the YouTube chat room, and now the Twitter. If you use hashtag DeltaCX, it will pop up on one of my 9,000 screens here, and I will throw your question up on the screen. So questions and comments are all welcome. And today's episode grew out of some private conversation you and I are having on LinkedIn messaging about, like, oh man, people are using the wrong terms. And I think the one we were on was like user research, usability research, UX research, and I'm probably guilty of misusing those terms as well. So if you don't mind, let's start on that one. What is the best way to express these things, and are they different from each other?
Yeah, so I have a pet peeve about this, and it's in my corporate training slide. There's a very big difference between a usability study, user testing, and Usertesting.com. So a usability study, something that we run to gather feedback on something that exists in some form. We're generally looking to understand how usable it is and or how we might be able to improve it. And this is a type of evaluative research. In contrast, people often use the term user testing. This is like nails on a blackboard to anybody who really has some level of UX maturity. And the reason for this is we never test users. We test prototypes. We test sequences. We test comprehension, prints, usability. Never, ever test users. So when someone like myself hears the term user testing, it's like, please don't use it. Now, Usertesting.com is a platform that is used by large organizations. It's very expensive. So that's
I remember when it wasn't expensive. That's when I used it.
Oh, interesting. So, I mean, I don't think that you could get access for less than $100,000 a year.
No. Oh, yeah. Five or so years ago, you could run a test for $49. It was kind of what Userlytics pricing is now.
Interesting. Okay, so in contrast to usability testing and user testing, Usertesting.com is a platform typically that large organizations use because they can afford it. And it provides the ability to run moderated and unmoderated studies. It also allows you to record, transcribe, edit, and create video highlight reels. It's a terrific platform, but not to be confused with the other two terms. Yeah.
Right. If someone says they're doing user testing, they're not necessarily using Usertesting.com.
Exactly. So competitors to Usertesting.com, the platform, might include things like Validately, or you could use some sort of analogous tools like that are offered on Optimal Workshop. If you wanted to do a card sort or something like that, but there are a variety of different platforms that facilitate different types of design and user research. This usertesting.com is a platform. And there's a variety of platforms available. That is just one like name brand platform.
And I should mention that we might mention a lot of brands and names today and say positive, neutral, or negative things about them, but this is not sponsored. Nobody has paid us to recommend any of these. Nobody has paid us to dislike any of these. This is completely not sponsored in any way. These just happen to be companies we're mentioning or possibly companies we like, but in this moment in time, catch me in the future. Unknown future preferences. So we're going to talk about lots of terms today. I want to ask you about one that I use a lot. So I'm going to pretend I'm the person who doesn't know anything, and I'm going to ask you questions all podcast like, what is this? Even if I know. So when we talk about dog fooding something, my dogs eat delicious food. What do we mean by that?
So dog fooding comes from the phrase, first of all, I should back up. There are a number of phrases in UX that refer to nature or are derivatives of nature. And I had a super fun time compiling a list of these that several people around the world helped me crowdsource and define by crowdsourcing. So dog fooding is one of those terms, and it comes from a phrase, eating your own dog food. And it refers to the practice of using your own product as a way to get initial feedback before releasing it to the public. So many times engineers will dog food a product before they go into beta. And beta testing would be used with potential customers or existing customers. It is definitely not a replacement, if you will, for other types of design or user research, but it's a method to communicate our product is good enough to get to the next kind of level.
Now that reminds me a little bit of eat your dog food. Yum, yum. My dogs eat baked chicken, so I recommend it highly. So that reminds me a little bit of a term I've used that I'm not a total fan of. Have you heard of the term hallway testing?
No. I think from the context, I would assume it's like just kind of interrupting someone in the hallway. So the technical term or the appropriate, more well-known term would probably be intercepts. And we can do an intercept testing by intercepting someone in person or intercepting them like on a website or intercepting them at a specific moment in time after they have just started or completed an experience.
Oh, that's what it sounds like. And again, I didn't make this up and I don't like this term, and clearly it's not obvious and intuitive what it even means, but it actually means when you do usability testing, but you don't bother going out and recruiting people who match your personas, you just do the testing on your coworkers.
So, highly not suggested for a variety of reasons.
Please shoot this one down. Here, let me set up the fire graphic. Let's not do this.
And there's so many reasons not to do that. First of all, I guess it would be a form of intercept recruiting, right? Because you're intercepting someone in the hallway. But there's a lot of reasons why you wouldn't want to do this. First of all, they know a lot about your product and your service and your customers and your goals. Second of all, they may not meet the mental model or the attitudes or the behaviors of the people who are best suited to provide you with feedback about whatever topic you're exploring. Those are two critical reasons. If you need to pilot a study and you really need to get some quick usability feedback, and you don't have it recruited properly or over-recruited to accommodate for the pilots, yes, you can use your team members. My suggestion is just choose someone completely outside of product or completely outside of engineering. Go to someone in the mailroom. Go to someone in training and development, someone in legal, someone in procurement that isn't really invested, involved, or even very
familiar.
conversational about product design or development. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for that. Yeah, that was that one makes me crazy. Hallway testing. Oh, and I see also on your list, because you sent me a list ahead of time, gorilla testing. So tell us a little bit about what that is, because it's not testing on animals. We don't recommend that either.
This is kind of in the whole nature area. So gorilla testing is really, really low fidelity, quick ways to get feedback. So that hallway intercept could be a form of gorilla testing, albeit not done very well. So gorilla testing might be some super lightweight approach to gathering feedback. However, it does aspire to gather feedback from the right people, right? So when we think of user research, we want to ask the right questions to the right people at the right time. So an example of gorilla testing might be if you're looking to understand how people think about food shopping, how they might think about a food service delivery or like a box delivery that comes to your house or a specialty diet. Maybe you want to consider doing some gorilla testing outside of a supermarket where you are intercepting people who are in the mindset and you know that they are active participants in some form of food preparation if they're food shopping.
Got it. Thank you for that. Yeah. So, and that was gorilla with a U, everybody. Guerilla. I've seen some people write it as gorilla, the animal, and it is guerrilla, the warrior, or the war people. So thank you for that. Let's talk a little bit. Go ahead.
I think it's important that, it's kind of warrior in fashion in that we're not, spending time to create any sort of precious research here. It's guerrilla as in warfare. So there's a relationship between the term guerrilla and why we use its relationship to guerrilla warfare.
And there might be warfare at our company if we release another crappy product to our customers.
Right.
And I should set up something for that. So let's talk. You mentioned card sort before. I did this in my, if people want to go and find my micro lessons playlist, there's a little information architecture lesson I did. But since we've got you here, can you give everybody a definition about like a card sort and when we do it and its matching cousin, the tree test, and when we do that?
Yes. So a card sort is a great way to learn how our target audience or the people that we're designing for think about, organize, and categorize the different information. So this information, they might be terms, they might be names, they might be images, they might be items, they might be topics. So, but they don't necessarily all have to be literal or written. They can also be as I mentioned, like images, or think about like a series of sounds, like which sounds are happy, which sounds are sad, or which sounds may sound Asian, or which sounds may sound tribal. And card sorts are a great way to understand how people organize seemingly disparate types of information. Now, there's 3 types of card sorts. You can do an open card sort, a closed card sort, or a hybrid card sort. And this is where in a closed card sort, we're providing the items and we're providing the categories for people to sort them in. So let's just say, for example, that we have a whole list of items and we are looking, these are items that you might find in a supermarket. And we're looking to understand where people think these items might be in relationship to the layout of the store, or how often they eat these items, or how important these items are in terms of the staples of their diet, right? So we would give them the items and then we would give them the categories to sort them in. That's called a closed card sort. A hybrid card sort is where we either give them some of the items and allow them to add their own, or some of the categories and allow them to add their own. So it's a hybrid in terms of what we're providing them versus what they can contribute. And an open card sort, we're either providing them with the categories and they provide the items, or we provide the items and they provide the categories, or some sort of balance between the two.
Open's my favorite. I just say, let's see where people go with this. I mean, obviously, it's a little harder to interpret because of all the answers you get back, but I always prefer to see where people's imaginations and senses of organization take them.
And in the beginning phases of a project, we can definitely use card sorts as a generative research method. We could use them to generate a better understanding of how people think about these items or topics or images or whatever they are. And we typically wouldn't do an open card sort at the end or once we have a decent understanding. We use open card sorts or hybrid card sorts towards the beginning. And then once we have that better understanding, we move towards closed card sorts.
And then what about its fun cousin, the tree test?
So tree tests are ways to test information architecture. I have actually never run a tree test.
Oh, I've run many. I love them.
Oh, so you are probably a better person to talk about tree tests.
Well, okay. Again, people can always refer in the YouTube archives in Delta CX, or you could just go to YouTube, search Delta CX information architecture, and you'll probably get my stream on that. But basically, a tree test is, as Michele said, something we run in information architecture when we are looking to see if our planned information architecture, maybe our proposed site navigation or our proposed organization of items, makes sense to people. So we emulate that hierarchy, and we give people tasks, and we see if they click in the right place that first click and see if they continue down the path or through the menus and submenus. To me, especially, I work a lot in SaaS systems, so especially great for me when I'm trying to figure out if when people are trying to get deep into that SaaS system, do the menu and submenus make sense? That is... that's a little bit on tree testing, the micro version. Michele, I wanted to ask.
Primarily quantitative, right? It's primarily quantitative.
Yeah, because there isn't a lot that people can do. I mean, you can put I use Optimal Workshop, again, not sponsored. And I can put a questionnaire in there and I can put open-ended questions after it to see if people have comments or thoughts. But in general, it's going to be quantitative. And the type of data Optimal Workshop gives you is going to be all kinds of dendrograms and these other things that show the relationships between, people who saw this tended to think it went with this, or no, that's card sort. Sorry, you get for tree test, tree test I love because and I think we did one if people search back for my old thing. Tree test, Optimal Workshop gives you direct success, direct failure, indirect success, indirect failure, who skipped it, what's the mean, median, and box and whiskers of how long they spent on it, where did people go when they went to the wrong place, how did people go when they went to the wrong place and then the right place. You get a lot of really great information. So not only do you end up with quantitative data on where did everyone kind of go wrong, which is really where did we go wrong in the information architecture, but then you also get some of the beginnings of the ideas of what to change or improve because you can see where everybody went instead.
Interesting. I love everything from Optimal Workshop. We should also, might be helpful to know that we talked about Usertesting.com, we talked about Validately, now we're talking about Optimal Workshop. These are a lot of platforms, but in addition to facilitating research, they can also help us recruit the right people. So they have access to their own panels or panelists. Panelists is what one way we can refer to the people that are taking our studies. Panelists are the same as testers, or the same as participants or recruits or subjects. We refer to them in a lot of ways. Optimal Workshop, Validately, Respondent.io. Those
I use Userlytics.
Userlytics, or there's another great platform called Userinterviews.com, and they specialize just in recruiting.
I'm using them right now.
They're terrific.
Not
they're
sponsored.
Terrific. So
I paid them. Let me break for one moment and do a quick plug for my company, which you know we always do about 20 minutes into the show. So give me a few moments to plug a few things, and then we're going to start up with Michele with a question from the chat room.
Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation.
And of course, it wouldn't be a podcast if I weren't also plugging my upcoming Acture workshop. Please remember that you can sign up now for the Acture workshop. You get the live workshop as well as my 9+ hours of videos of my core skills training that I made up myself. And those two together are normally $900. And because 2020 has sucked, I'm making it available for $60 American, 60. Please follow deltacx.link/DEC 2020 because this is happening in December 2020. So I hope to see everybody there. It'll be a live 2-day workshop, and whether or not you can make the workshop, you will get the videos. And of course, I'd like to remind people, please hit the like button, especially if you're in YouTube. Won't you empathize with the like button? Have deep empathy for it, and let the YouTube algorithm know you love stuff like this and you can't wait to see Michele again. And of course, won't you please usability test the subscribe button? A certain boyfriend wrote these jokes, Michele. I hope you appreciate the humor here. And of course, you can join the Slack channel as well. There's no charge. This is not a closed community. We welcome everybody. We've got over 300 people now in the Slack community. It's not that active, but it'll pick up as more people join in. And of course, you have direct access to me when I'm awake. So that having been said, let's go back to the Love Festival. And we've got a question in the LinkedIn chat room from Bill. And Bill says, any tips on transcribing videos from Zoom interviews?
So interviews conducted on Zoom, should I be interpreting that?
Yeah, that's how I'm interpreting that. That you've done an interview in Zoom, you have a saved video, now you want to transcribe, I guess, speech to text.
Okay, so it depends on what sort of Zoom level you have. So the corporate Zooms will transcribe them for you. If you have like an individual, or I don't know what their levels are called, like enterprise level, or certainly the highest level does automatic transcription. The individual or lower levels don't. There's a couple of different tools that I recommend for transcription, depending upon your time and appetite to invest in such a thing. For a totally down and dirty transcription, if you don't have access to that enterprise level Zoom, you can always upload your video to a private YouTube channel and use YouTube's closed captioning to do a very cursory transcription for free. There are some paid services that you can use as well. Temi is one of them, Temi. Another one is Otter, Otter.ai. There are some other tools as well. If you're looking to edit them and create highlight reels, and you have access to Usertesting.com, you port from Zoom and then upload to Usertesting.com, which will also do the transcription for you automatically to create sound bites as well.
Yeah, and there's another one. So the higher level Zoom, if you don't have that corporate or enterprise level, they just integrated with Otter. And so if you aren't using that, you can get nearly a similar thing by having a Zoom subscription and having an Otter subscription. So I do pay for Otter, not sponsored. I pay them. And I'm paying $10 a month for Otter. And right now I'm also trying out Descript, which evidently is pronounced that way. And they are using the Rev AI, which is different than the Otter AI. Descript is interesting because you can bring in a video. When you see the audio, first of all, unlike Otter, Descript is leaving in ums and uhs. Some people like that because it's more realistic to what people said. Some people wish those were gone. And as you edit the text on the screen, it edits the video. It's wild. And you can also make clips from it. So I'm trying it out now. It's a memory hog, so there's pros and cons to Descript.
I also strongly recommend Reduct. Reduct.video is one of my favorite platforms in the whole wide world. It was developed by a team of product designers from Stanford University, and they created it. It is a video editing platform created specifically for user researchers to edit user interviews or interviews with what do we call them? Panelists, participants, subjects, recruits, target audience, whatever we want to refer to. It is the most intuitive editing software, both in terms of transcription and in terms of video, I've ever seen. I used to run for the hills if somebody asked me to create video highlight reels until I beta tested Reduct, which was now about 2.5 years ago. I love it so much. I've actually literally input my daughter's birthday parties and edited those on there. Seriously, it's that great. Reduct.video, and I'm doing an interview, a webinar with them on Wednesday talking about how I build user research training programs for teams. So please join us for that if you're interested. Regardless, it's they just rolled out some new pricing. Highly recommend you check it out. Again, not sponsored either. I pay them.
Exactly. And Marisol asked me to put these in the YouTube description, so I am typing them behind the scenes. So if you hear me typing, I apologize. I'm trying to get these into that. So I've got Descript.com, Otter.ai, Reduct.video. Anything else you want me to add to the YouTube description?
I would. It's probably worth it to. Oh well, that's not. Reduct and YouTube aren't necessarily associated. Those are just two ways to approach different transcriptions. So we had Otter, Rev, Temi, YouTube, Siri also, if you have an Apple device. And then the other platforms like Zoom, depending upon your level of subscription or access, and Usertesting.com, Validate.ly, and those tools as well. Lots of options. Lots of options.
Yes, for sure. All right, I'm getting these all in the YouTube description. Okay, thank you for that. Whew. And thanks to Marisol for saying, Marisol, I'm doing it now so I don't forget. So she's like, you can do it later. I'm like, I'll forget. So going back to some nature terms, a lot of people talk about waterfall and they make it sound evil and terrible, and they make it sound like Agile is the glowing golden calf. So tell us about what is waterfall.
So waterfall is the complete opposite of Agile. So waterfall and Agile are both project management methodologies. Agile takes a very iterative approach where we progress a little bit, gather some feedback, and then we incorporate that feedback. We take 2 steps further and then incorporate. We move forward in kind of these bite-sized steps. Waterfall is the opposite, and it breaks down the product development activities into very specific phased or gated steps. And we are not necessarily gathering feedback. We're defining all of the requirements up front, or a huge majority of them, and nothing is released or tested until the entire process is complete. So it's sort of, in today's product development world, an antiquated approach. Now that we understand how valuable it is to do user research and gather feedback along the way, waterfall is considered a very outdated approach to product development. Agile is definitely a best practice that's been embraced, certainly in the majority, if not all tech companies, if you will.
Or at least some sort of agile or fake agile or attempting to be agile.
Right. Aspirational agile.
That's
right.
what I like to say. Aspirational agile.
But at least there's recognition that waterfall isn't necessarily the best approach. In fact, waterfall introduces a tremendous amount of risks associated with it.
Yeah, and just as an example for those new to the terms, when I worked at Wells Fargo in 2012, we were building Wells Fargo's first iPad app, and that was a waterfall process. And that meant that we spent a year and a half building the iPad app, and then we released it. And, while I don't remember there really being user testing along the way, other than we did test with accessibility. We did do accessibility testing on it, but it's not like we had rounds and rounds of people who were coming in to say, ooh, I need this, ooh, I don't like this. So for those of you who hear Agile, Waterfall, what is that? Certainly you can always check my Agile podcast previously, but we want to be more agile, and we want to get away from projects taking too long before we get that good user and customer feedback from good UX processes.
Right,
and
right.
Quickly, Michele, I find sometimes when I am in terrible battles with Agile and Scrum people that they believe that we really can't get that feedback until engineering codes it and we've released it to the public. And I believe that we can get that feedback through prototyping and usability testing. What's your take on where in the process we can and should get that feedback?
So I have this, I wrote this LinkedIn post. I often write about conversations from the classroom, and one of my students said, when's the best time to do user research? And my answer was yes.
Right.
It's just, yeah, it's always a good time. There is so just yes. And I absolutely, positively couldn't underscore this enough. So ideally in product development, what we're doing is we are researching throughout the entire process. So we are feeding and collaborating with our stakeholders and the people who need to make confident decisions continuously throughout the cycle. So we're conducting, in very, very basic terms, we're conducting generative research when we think we might have an idea. We're understanding and generating a better sense of the problem space, the pain points, how people are operating or what they're doing as a result of this today before we sketch or code anything. We want to understand how they think about it, what's working and what's not, where are they going to solve this problem, how deep is that pain. We want to generate a better understanding. And then as we get that understanding, then we develop a very low fidelity concept or a very low fidelity, maybe it's a paper prototype. It could be a storyboard. It could be a 2-paragraph just kind of sketch. It could be a sentence or a paragraph about, a concept. And then we're gathering feedback about that. And then when we gather that feedback, then maybe we'll move to something a little higher fidelity, but we continue to gather feedback at every single step throughout the entire process. And if we don't do that, then oftentimes research is seen as a bottleneck, too expensive, or is slowing down the process. And you know what? It might be all of those things if it's not incorporated throughout. So when is the best time to conduct user research? Yes. The answer is just yes. It's always a good time. But if you have to choose, which would be very unfortunate, I would suggest in that very beginning phase, in that generative phase, so you can really generate a better understanding of this problem space and the people impacted by it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. These are the things I've been saying, and it's so nice to hear another human saying them, especially one I respect and admire. So thank you. Someone help me. Help me. You've got...
help you. Yes.
We help each other. Yes. I'm there for you. It's the empathy. So one of the other terms you had on your list that I wanted to jump down the list to is a few days ago, a well-known Instagrammer bitched me out when we had a fight over the term HCD, and she said HCD is a mindset. Can you maybe give everybody your definition of HCD? Because I think people see this term thrown around a lot, but they might not know what it is or what it represents.
So HCD to me is human-centered design.
You are correct. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that's how
that wasn't a trick.
It
that was not a trick question. Unfortunately, someone yelled at me that it was a mindset that you overlay onto design thinking. But I'd like to hear your definition of human-centered design, if you have one.
Yes. So to me, human-centered design is how we think about a problem space, and we tackle problems with the user, or again, if we're gonna, go through kind of different terms, the participant, the end user, the recruit, whatever, with that target person at the center of the design question, at the center of that need. So we use human-centered design throughout the entire research and design process for any product or service that wants to put a human at the heart of the solution. Instead,
when don't we want that?
What was that?
When don't we want that? No, when?
When
don't we want a human at the center?
When I almost made a political statement there.
Oh God, don't do that. Beep,
I can't think of
I need a test pattern. Let's keep it light. Yeah, let's keep it light.
I can't think of a good reason when we wouldn't want to do that. Certainly anybody that has worked in the industry for a long time and would consider themselves to have any sort of UX maturity would always embrace and champion a user-centered focus, human-centered design, customer centricity. I mean, all of these things really overlap. User experience, we could just go on and on and on. But it is how we think about and tackle problems from the user's point of view, and looking within, or looking at our product or service and the experience that we're offering and those touch points from their perspective, and continually revisiting it from their perspective. It's not built. I'll pause there.
Okay. Well, that was super. So another, I saw that person up. Yeah, that person. I just said, I think given how many followers they have on Instagram, they could do better than to bitch me out and say HCD is a mindset. What mindset were you in? The hate customers mindset? Now I'm in the HCD.
It's a process.
I don't drink, but I might start. We were talking before about Agile and Waterfall, and another acronym I saw on your list was MVP. And I bet a lot of people, especially new to UX, are seeing the term MVP thrown around. How would you define the MVP, and what's UX's role in it?
Yeah, so MVP stands for minimum viable product. And this is how we talked earlier about Agile and how we iterate throughout the product development cycle. And this also ties really closely with when's the best time to do research? Yes. Let's start. And if you have to choose a good time, let's start with generative. So an MVP would be the smallest, most bite-sized piece or components or interactions or features or functionalities that whatever we're designing needs to include in order for us to get this out the door. So I'll give you an example from the Curiosity Tank classes. They offer a suite of 5 workshops in a series called Ask Like a Pro. My MVP, what was that?
I'm just repeating it. Ask like a pro.
Oh. So my MVP, first of all, was I only developed 3 of those workshops first, and then I pre-sold them to validate the need and the interest for the first 3 classes. And I also built them out with the minimum viable product, which was the minimum viable technology, communications, registration, payment, everything, to just get it out the door and get immediate feedback. Once I did, and then I learned from that, and then I added onto it, and then I eventually added more classes, and they became more and more sophisticated with different levels of technology and access and permissions. Now you can participate in a couple of ways, but out the door, I developed an MVP outline in my mind. Then I pre-sold it to validate the need. Then I conducted those first 3 classes, learned from it, and continued to iterate. So your MVP is your minimum viable product to get it out the door. And we use those so that we can test and learn.
Yeah, whole testing and learning process. I would like to joke that if there were an MVP version of YouTube, you would be able to watch a video, but not subscribe or like it or comment. Like if we really stripped YouTube down to the minimum thing it could be to just be viable, a functioning video platform, it would be upload a video, watch a video, the end. And of course, if you see that people like to upload and watch videos, then you start learning what other features they expect, need, or require for their tasks and jobs to be done. Speaking of jobs to be done, Michele.
Also not something that I have explored, but something that I'm very interested in. Jobs to be done is a research methodology that focuses on certain tasks to complete. So, for example, if you were to say, if you're going to, let's take Delta CX and this YouTube channel, we might ask ourselves, what job are the viewers hiring the Delta CX YouTube channel to do or to deliver? And maybe those jobs would include, they're going to help me learn more about the key terminologies I need to know as I go through the interview process. They're going to help me, and then you can kind of fill in the blanks with other episodes or of the show. But basically, it's focused on the job that we are hiring a product or service to do. What are we paying that product or service to do? That would be my interpretation. But again, it's not a methodology that I have explored.
Yeah, I go for the task analysis angle, which is a cousin of jobs to be done. And it's basically a way to use your qualitative research to determine what your target customer groups need, require, expect, and really not from like a perspective of, hey, what do you like? But what are you trying to get done in this system, in this product, in your workflow? Not our workflow, your workflow, the user, the customer. And then once we can analyze that, and then we can understand what people are trying to do, then we're more likely to see where are the opportunities to create, architect, or build something that speaks to those tasks or the jobs they need to do, aka jobs to be done. We have a question from the audience, from Ralitza, and she and I had talked privately, and we're trying to remember to ask you this, and I'm so glad she did because I totally forgot. Ralitza, you win. And she says, discussion guides, is this the only way to call them? What's the best way to refer to that aspect of the process? So are there other terms for discussion guide?
So A discussion guide to me is a tool that a facilitator uses to document and outline everything that will happen in a research session. It's not just the words that will be spoken or the activities that will take place. Certainly in my discussion guides, I'm also including timestamps. I'm also marking must-have questions in case I get a late start or there are some issues or my participants have to leave early.
Or they're very yappy.
Whether they're yappy, right? It includes links to anything I might be testing, any sort of stimuli, and everything like that. So I have called them scripts or questionnaires. This would not be accurate, actually. A guide, it is intended to do that, just guide the moderator through a series of conversations. However, a very skilled moderator and a moderator that's comfortable with the subject matter, I always suggest piloting. We could do an entire episode on piloting. Will feel free, let's do it, will feel free or should feel free to allow the participant to explore tangential topics and feel confident in both bringing back that participant, to the main focus if they can't see the connection, but exploring sort of tangential material as well. So
yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I always try to inspire. I mean, you're the person I refer to researchers to learn more from, but when I'm trying to help researchers, I always try to help them understand the difference between yappy yap people that we need to kind of reel in, and when those people drop hints that we need to really chase and ask that follow-up question to, even if it's not in our script or our guide.
Yes. And, here's a tip for anybody who's conducting these live or moderated sessions, if you will. I use the first 5 minutes of the sessions to really size up those participants and to evaluate how engaged they are, how verbose they are, and will adjust my approach accordingly in the fly. So if I have someone that's leaning like really far back, I might ask them to come a little bit closer. I want them to come close enough so that I can actually see their smile lines, so that I can tell whether or not they're giving me a real smile or a fake smile. I'm also going to use it to gauge how quickly they talk. And if they are slow, I might say things like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I talk about or when I ask you about? And then the opposite's true. If they're very, very verbose, I might say, briefly, could you please describe? Or how would you summarize? And I'm going to inject those little things along the way. And then if they're really running off on a tangent, or I can't find out, how they got there and I need to bring them back, I'm going to use some techniques called signposting to let them know. And there's visual cues with signposting. There's verbal cues with signposting. Something that I like to do is like lean forward and, or maybe put a finger up, or again, I'm modeling the behavior that I would like for them to model. So I'm going to be really close. I'm going to be very engaged, look them directly in the eye, and they're going to know. But signposting is a great way to kind of bring that back together.
Interesting. Sounds like we can do a whole other, sounds like we're planning our next podcast together, which just warms my heart.
Yeah.
Hooray. Never running out of topics. Hooray. So a couple of words that you had on your list are really acronyms that I do want to bring up, even though they're often seen as marketing terms, but sometimes they get thrown around in front of us, or there's a lot of people now talking about UX needs to look at metrics and marketing metrics. Let's talk a little bit about KPIs and OKRs. Do you have definitions of those that you can share?
Yeah. So when we build our research plan with our stakeholders, and it's paramount that we include our stakeholders in our research plans, we always want to tie our research questions into business goals or business metrics. And actually in the plan template that I use, there's a space that says, that refers to specific business metrics. Now, KPI stands for Key Performance Indicator. OKR is objectives
and key results.
Objectives and key results. Different organizations use different metrics. Some use the STAR framework. Some use Six Sigma. Some use, I'm a huge Six Sigma fan. I was a trained
I'm
Six
studying
Sigma
Lean
belt.
Six Sigma now, and I'm like, ooh.
Oh.
I'm studying
God,
Green
I went down
Belt.
like a rabbit hole 20 years ago on that. Oh my God, I love the whole everything about Six Sigma. Anyway, my suggestion is to use what's culturally relevant to you and your organization and your audience. But the bottom line is, when we conduct design and user research, it is always connected to a business goal. Always. We do not conduct research for any sort of theoretical sense or to navel gaze or anything like that.
Yeah, and to give an example of that, at a place I worked that I won't name, I remember at one point the research team did a study on how do our customers perceive pricing, because this was an e-commerce website, and they actually tried to dig into, like, if we cross a pricing out, what's their model on that? If we make a pricing red, if we show different pricing, if we show tiered pricing, if it ends in .95, is that different than if it ends in .99? Is that different if it ends in .00? And at first this sounded like navel gazing or so what or busy work, but it was actually tied to a fight the UX department was having with the legal team at the time, because the legal team wanted us to express prices in a certain way, and our hypothesis was that would be perceived negatively by the customer. And so we embarked on this research study, the research team. I didn't get to do it. And we were able to go back to the lawyers and say, here's how we should express pricing. Can you give us the okay on this? And so that was really meaningful. And I think that if we can tie all these things back to good business and project reasons, then there's plenty of research we can keep doing.
And another reason to make sure that we're always tied into business metrics is because I have also found that your user research will be far more successful when we make our user research goal everyone's goal. So if it doesn't tie into business metrics, abort ship, woo, 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 like leave, because nothing is going to happen to it. It's going to sit on a shelf. Like, your user research goals need to pass what I refer to as the who cares test. And in order for someone to care about it, it's going to have to tie into some sort of business goal or metric. If it doesn't tie into one of those things, and you can't make user research goals your stakeholder goals, like, it'll just sit on a shelf. It'll be a waste of effort. You're going to be pushing water uphill and nobody's going to care. It's going to be a really, really sad. We need to cue the wah, 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 wah.
Oh, hold on. I've got something for that. Here you go. Okay. Okay, there you go. Sadness. Thank you. Very good. And theater. Jazz hands.
Yeah, we just don't want to do it. Just, you've got to tie it into business metrics. We are not academic researchers here. Not that there's anything wrong with academic researchers. They have a different goal. And a lot of that goal is to get published, which is very different from applied research.
Yeah. And Ralitza, who has an extensive background as an Agile coach and Scrum Master, among other things, and is now transitioning to UX research, reminds us that OKRs can define really challenging goals, which are sometimes even a little bit impossible, and the sweet spot might be even if 60 to 70% of that goal gets done by the stated period. So I've got a little bit about OKRs in my book. If anybody's still reading my book from last year, Delta CX, plug. But these are also highly Googleable. So, get to know KPIs and OKRs and where we can be involved in creating our own or working with product, stakeholders, engineering, and other people to determine what do we need to measure to show if something is a success or a failure. Because I don't know about you, Michelle, but places where I've worked, I feel like Nobody wants to admit out loud if anything was a success or a failure, and magically none of these goals get stated up front.
That's very unfortunate. To follow up what you were saying about Googling, not only would I Google these things or do I suggest that people Google them, but as you're going through the interview process at these organizations, I would ask them what frameworks they use to measure business success. And then absolutely, positively, use your research mindset. One of my pet peeves is when my students will tag me in one of my templates, if you will, or one of my many tools or resources. And there's a lot of those on the website as well. And they'll say, what is this? What is a rainbow spreadsheet? What is an OKR? And it's like nails on a blackboard. You are here to learn about research. My expectation of you is that you're doing at least a quick Google search before you ask me a question like that. So Google's your friend.
Everybody, I know I've told this story at least 4 times on the podcast, but everybody knows I got bitched out last year on LinkedIn by a junior because I had said like, oh, Don Norman plans to redefine UX education and I'd like to wait and see what he comes up with. And a research junior, I mean, her title was like research junior looking for work type of thing. And she wrote back on LinkedIn, and this was public, and I must have a screenshot somewhere, I'm sure. And it said, she wrote like, and I'm giving her this voice. I don't know what she really sounds like, but she wrote, I don't know who Don Norman is or, why I should care or why I'm waiting for him to redefine research. So why don't you just tell me who he is? And I wrote back and I said, I understand that you might not have heard who Don Norman is. I can forgive you for not knowing who Don Norman is, but I don't forgive you for not Googling it.
I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. If you really want to work in UX, whether it's UX research or design or anything, you have got to begin and develop your research mindset. It is
Curiosity tank, people. Curiosity.
We teach people how to develop their curiosity skills with rigor, how to make more confident decisions, how to ask better questions. Everybody benefits. Every single person on the planet benefits from learning how to ask better questions, learning how to dig deeper. And I'm talking about like your babysitter and the clerk at the grocery store and your partner and the bus driver. Learning how to communicate with people and have really meaningful conversations is a powerful skill that will help you in every aspect of your life for the rest of your life.
And if I can throw a personal story on top of that, many of you know I am a completely insane Walt Disney World Florida fan. And I usually go at least once a year, though obviously this year not going and probably not next year. But every time I go, I try to learn something new about how Disney World Florida works. And that's just because I'm a curious weirdo. And one time I went and Disney was testing a new variation of an internal transportation system. And I decided I was going to learn everything I could about the internal transportation system. And I ended up on a number of internal transportation buses where I was the only passenger. And the ride was about 20 minutes. And I grilled the heck out of the bus driver. Every ride I took, I learned how they got trained. I learned what licensing they have to have. I learned how they're dispatched. I know how the Walt Disney World buses are dispatched. I learned all this really. Now, does that knowledge get me anywhere? Just in my own mind. There's no certificate in knowledge of Disney World internal transportation. But like, that's who I am at my core, and I know that's who many of you are at your core, and it's a great way. It's, certainly not official UX research, but I think it's a great way to exercise your curiosity and your interviewing.
I love that story. I did not know that about you in Disney World either.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I bought into the timeshare system. I'm an absolutely rabid Disney World fan. I'm Parks Resorts, so I don't care about princesses and movies. I am Parks and Resorts. So I went on an Epcot tour at one point, and the tour guide realized I knew everything, and she'd be like, okay, Debbie, how many tiles are on Epcot's spaceship Earth? The big golf ball at the front.
Oh, gosh, I've got to introduce you to my 7-year-old.
We can talk about Peppa Pig. I would love to talk to her about Peppa Pig. Yeah. I've been watching Peppa Pig in Italian to when I didn't know more Italian, my teacher had me watching children's shows. Anyway, we are out of time, though I could talk to you all day long about everything UX and non-UX. Always happy to have you here. Thanks to the audience for some great questions from the live group. We still have 13 people live in YouTube, and I didn't check how many people live on LinkedIn. So Michele, close it out. Let everybody know where they can find you on all the interwebses, your Twitter, Instagram, website. How do we find you?
I am most active on LinkedIn. Michele Ronsen is Ronsen.
And Michele with one L. Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. And you can also please sign up for my newsletter called Fuel Your Curiosity. It's a monthly-ish user research newsletter. And reach out, introduce yourself. I'm here for the long haul, and so happy to be here and share my passion and my love, and help people like you learn how to ask better questions.
Fantastic. So find her curiositytank.com. Sign up for those courses. I haven't taken the courses. Michele pays me nothing to say anything about these courses, not sponsored. My boyfriend did the Observer. He did the Observer version of the courses. So he watched, but he didn't participate, and he had lovely things to say. So I feel comfortable recommending them. So please check it out. And other than that, it sounds like Michele and I will be planning another podcast. Quick show notes. This is UX Research Week. So on Wednesday, we will have Joel Barr joining to talk about combating the typical reasons businesses give to skimp on UX research. Thursday, we snap out of Research Week, and we have Dr. Nick Fine and good friend Darren Hood talking about how UX juniors can stand out. And we mean positively, and we mean when you're trying to get a job. So that'll be the rest of this week's program. Of course, tomorrow's office hours Ask Me Anything. I'll be here from 6:30 p.m. Italy time for an hour taking your questions. I've already received 3 questions, so come on and join and ask your questions live. Thanks to Florence for joining. Thanks to everybody in the chat rooms, and I'm going to play us out of here. Michele, be well and see you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.